And we are live.
Heck yeah.
Check.
Um, I am currently looking at new wireless headphones.
You are.
Because you can see like mine are starting to wear, and I'm like, why
Oh,
replace the pads
do you
when you
not
can replace
replace?
the headphone?
Oh, fine. Fair enough. Fair
Um,
enough.
I also have some like Stripe, office
Ooh,
budget to burn through, so
nice.
could be a good one. Do you have the
Which ones are
Sonys?
you? No, I just have the AirPods Pro. I think this is version
Amazing.
2. And I love them. I love how compact they are.
Yes.
So I mean, this is like not just everyday carry. This is like everyday pocket. Like I
Yeah.
just keep them in my pocket. But I've wondered about the Apple ones. Um, the vain part of me doesn't want to mess my hair up, but I tell you what, when I am editing a podcast, I have to have headphones in.
Yeah.
You just hear things that you don't hear otherwise. And I have wondered if I would get even more clarity from the over ear.
Here is I got a couple takes here. The last time I
Okay.
was on a plane, I was wearing these and I was
Uh-huh.
swapping back and forth between these and the AirPod Pros. And
Okay.
I actually found that the AirPod Pros canceled better than these over
Really?
ears. Yeah. Um,
Wow.
so I'm almost just like AirPod Pros are the way to go. But
Okay.
I do think I'm thinking about the Apple ones too. And it's like again, it'll work with the ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. But they're heavy and I think they're gonna be hot. And I have a small
Mm,
head and
yeah.
they don't really fit well. Like
Interesting.
just a little too big.
So, are you gonna stay Sony or are you gonna go like inner ear
I
or Bose?
No, I don't think I'd go to Bose. Like the new Sonys look pretty good. I might keep trying those Apple ones or like wear them for like a week and see what happens.
Yeah.
Um, but I really like the wired one for that feedback through my mic. Like I like
Uh-huh.
listening to myself. Do you hear yourself when you talk?
Um, I mean, I hear myself
No, but
in
you
the
don't hear
sense
the
of
mic.
I don't think I hear myself in my ears. No.
I do
No, I
because
don't think
like
I do.
I need to know when the mic is hot. So if I say
Oh.
something and I can hear it, I know I'm good. And if I don't, and then I know I'm safe.
Oh, that's helpful for being muted. Like
Yeah,
if you're like, "Oh,
exactly.
I
That's
can't."
exactly what it
Okay.
is. Yeah, because between like the Zoom mute and the Stream Deck mute and all these
Mm,
different mutes,
mhm.
one day I didn't have everything muted and something came through Zoom
Oopsies.
because I was on the wrong audio channel and I was like, I can't have that happening.
Well, okay, so 2 things. You know about the interview we did with, oh, stink, I had his name on the tip of my tongue. It's the with Postgres. Not
Oh, yeah,
Postgres,
yeah, yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Postman.
Yes.
Here, I'm gonna look it up really quick for the 5 people that are listening right now if you wanna check this out. So the episode that we did hold on, let me see. Where is he? This is embarrassing. This is it, right? It was like it's episode 178. Oh yeah, Ruben Costas. I could only think of his last name. So episode 178, James and I recorded live in California, in San Francisco at the Postman conference at PostCon. And we were using Postman's equipment and they had we could tell them what equipment we wanted. So we are all using Shure mics, but they had an upgraded version of the Shure mic. It was like a slightly different one so that we could get like USB and stuff. There was a feature on the mic where if you touch the mic, it actually mutes the mic, which I can see
Yeah.
how that might be helpful if you are in Zoom calls and things like that. But we didn't know about this feature. And granted, there is a light on the microphone that turns from green to red when you are
Yes,
muted,
I've seen
but
those.
we had it upside down. So the light was pointed like I
Uh-huh.
couldn't see it. And so the first thing that Ruben did when he sat down was he adjusted the mic. I do the same thing. And he muted himself and he was muted the entire interview. And it was so disappointing. But what's interesting is there's a site called like La 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 AI or La La La. Anyways, I can share a link if you're interested, but I adjusted the levels because we're all in the same room. I could faintly hear him in my mic, and I was able to adjust the levels. The echo was terrible, but that AI totally adjusted everything. And so we were able to like salvage the episode. He doesn't sound stellar, but he doesn't sound bad.
That's
So
amazing that you can recreate that kind of
crazy.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask you something else about the headphones. I don't remember, but I have heard like you that they are heavy. I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos where people are talking about them.
Yeah.
I do like how durable they are. The only other thing is like I just think about in my head, I'm like, they would be great to travel with on the airplane. And also, this sounds so terrible to communicate to people. I have headphones in. Don't talk
Yes.
to me on the
Yes.
flight.
Yes.
But I'm like, I also don't want to carry them around. I'm like, I love the
Well,
fact that I can just put the AirPods in my pocket.
they have no case. Like the case is that
Right.
dumb
It's like a
sleeve
purse.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like that and the monitor too. Cause like I would love like a
Mhm.
studio display, but the studio display is getting dated and needs an upgrade. And so
Uh-huh.
do these AirPods Max. And I'm just waiting for the Apple event where they
Yeah,
upgrade everything. And then I'll be like, boom,
sure.
now it's the time.
I'll tell one more story and then we can get into our other content. So I'm part of this like YouTube cohort right now. And one guy in my cohort was talking about feedback through his headphones. And he was saying he was saying that he recorded a video where he mispronounced a bunch of stuff because he couldn't hear himself. I was
Wait,
like,
what?
that was my thought. Anyways, he said he was recording this video and he mispronounced a bunch of things because he couldn't hear himself. And I was also like, you can
That's
still
weird. Okay.
hear yourself. Like I can, and
Sure.
I still know what I'm saying. It's not like I'm, speaking another language. But anyways, I just kind of nodded along and then whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Some people are funny. We'll talk more about that cohort in today's content. So
Sweet.
I'm excited about this episode. I'll just get into it instead of telling people what we're talking about. Let's just do it. Okay. Here is the intro. Okay, cool. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web design and development with a little bit of zest. In today's episode, we will be talking about commits to cash, monetizing your coding skills and making money online.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compressed.
Hello, my name is Amy Dutton, and I am a lead maintainer on the Redwood JS core team.
My name is Brad Garapi. I'm a senior front-end developer at Stripe.
Sweet. So as I mentioned, today we are going to be talking about commits to cash, monetizing your coding skills, and making all the money, big money online.
Yeah, and I feel like there's just been a lot going on lately that's got me thinking about all this stuff. Like from people posting videos on YouTube about their progress they've made this year, to it's tax time and money has been on my mind, and to me thinking about what I want to build this year. It's just like it started that train rolling, and it makes me feel behind already, if I'm being honest. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I equate a lot of this to the gold rush and whatever year that was, where everybody ran out to California trying to pan for gold and just dreams of making it big. And I feel like some of that still exists now with Silicon Valley and San Francisco and all these things of, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to have my startup and I'm going to make it big. I'm going to be the one to launch the next unicorn startup and make billions of dollars. And like, I feel that I'm a dreamer. And so like, I love that idea of being one of the few that is successful. And the thing is, I think sometimes we forget that they are called unicorns for a reason. That's the minority, not the rule. But there's also other people online that are making a substantial amount of money that they're able to live off. They might not be billionaires, but they're living comfortably and coding and working on projects that they want to work on. So I think for me, like, of course, I would like to build the next unicorn, but realistically, I understand I would just be happy if I had a successful startup that could support me and my family and give us the financial freedom to do what we want to do.
Man, and you're like even one step ahead of me in like your wishes here. I'm like supplemental income. Let's start there. If I could make like I'm making on average, like let's say 5 to 7 extra $1,000 a year for side stuff. And it's like, let's keep moving that number up every year. Let's
Yeah.
commit to a couple more things or launch something that can bring in slow revenue throughout the year. That's where my head's at.
Sure. Well, and I think some of that probably just comes from the fact that I did run my own company for 7 years.
Yeah.
I did a lot of agency work and freelance work. And right before COVID, I ended up joining one of my clients full time. And honestly, it was probably one of the best moves that I ever could have made at the time. I obviously didn't know COVID was going to hit, but one of my main clients was a boutique speakers bureau out of Atlanta. And we all know what happened during COVID. All events dried up. And so I wouldn't have had work for that year. I mean, even the client that I joined, so I joined Zeal, and the main project that I was working on, they hit pause on Zeal's work. So even if I had been a freelancer working for Zeal, I probably would have lost that contract, or at least they would have hit pause on that as well. So I'm really grateful for kind of jumping back into traditional employment. But there is a part of me that kind of wants to go back, but back in a different way. So before I was doing all agency work, and people think, oh, that's living the dream. But it's like, instead of having one boss, I had like 10 bosses at a time. And it was incredibly stressful
Yeah.
and just doing a lot of work. So I know the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but I really would like to see, okay, what would it be like to make a product where, yes, I have hopefully hundreds of thousands of clients in the sense of customers, but I'm also the one helping drive the roadmap and making those decisions.
Yeah. Okay, that's probably a good starting point. Like we could start with what steps are you and I taking to reach our individual goals, and not necessarily monetarily, but like what are we doing in our free time on a day-to-day basis to make small progress?
Mhm.
Now, you said you're a dreamer, you have a lot of big goals. You've talked about this on the podcast
Mhm.
before. Build 12 is the phrase that you're using.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And we mentioned YouTube videos. Amy released a
Mhm.
YouTube video, which kind of I also saw Clark Sell release a YouTube video recently, Lauren Pop, and everybody's just kind of talking about their big goals,
Mhm.
which really spawned this whole conversation. So, Amy,
Yeah.
you want to give us a recap of your video?
Yeah. I mean, go big or go home, right?
Go back. Yeah.
Well, and I am home. I am working from home. So how about both? So I started off the year saying I'm going to build 12 projects in 12 months. And part of the reason was exactly what we're talking about. But I also recognize that startups is really a numbers game. If you look at these creators that are really successful, like Mark Liu and Peter Levels, they're seeing a 4% success rate in the things that they've built, which is really disheartening, but also kind of like encouraging for people that have built things that have not seen success. It's like, this is the norm.
And they don't have to be big things. Like freaking Mark Liu's biggest earner is a Next.js starter kit.
Mhm.
Peter Levels is making like 80 grand right now off of an AI generated flight game that are like
Yeah.
pixel blobs. It doesn't have to be this unicorn startup thing. You just have to put out enough bets that each one of
Mhm.
them spawns a little bit of interest, and you're like, multiple income streams kind of build to give you what you need, that momentum. And if you're
That's right.
sharing about building this stuff, people sometimes just like it for the pure like ingenuity of it all,
Mhm.
and they want to
Mhm.
just feel involved.
Well, and that does bring up a great point. There's kind of two different approaches here. So I decided I'm going to try and play the numbers game. Not sure
Hmm.
what's going to succeed. So I'm going to do these 12 projects, and at a 4% success rate, I'm still under zero. But if I do this for 2 years, hopefully I'll have one. And that's really the goal, right? Is just to find the one that clicks. The other approach, we had Danny Grant on the podcast I was not on that particular episode, but I edited it. So maybe you remember, Brad, but she was saying that for Dev Jam, they went through 8 iterations of that product before they finally hit a point of success. So that's a different thing. You can double down on one thing and just
Yeah.
decide, hey, I'm going to pivot until I find something that clicks.
Yeah. That's true. And we've seen that with stuff like, what was it? Was it Graph Cool that eventually turned into, was it Prisma?
Prisma.
What did
Yep.
Graph? Yeah, that's crazy.
And I would even say Prisma to some extent, hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying this, but Prisma to some extent has still been trying to find their product market fit. They have
Yeah.
an open source project that's been incredibly successful, but in terms of finding a path to money, you've seen them release different types of projects or sunset a few different projects that didn't necessarily click. So they just released their hosted Postgres option. I think that is a step in that direction.
Yeah, it's going to be a really solid foundation to build on. You trust Prisma with your database integrations. Why not trust them with your database? It seems like a really good path forward.
Yep. And we had Ryan Schinke on the podcast previously. He was talking about some of the features. They have a really interesting feature set there that I think will set them apart. But to your point, so I'm trying to build 12 projects, and I created a YouTube video. We can include a link in the chat and the show notes. But it was kind of my reflections on the past 2 months, because we are now March, month 3. And if you've been looking at my feed, I haven't dropped a project yet. So that doesn't mean that those projects aren't going to happen. They're still going to happen. It just means that they haven't been dropped yet. So this is 12 projects in 12 months, maybe not 1 project per month, maybe closer to that cadence. That's the goal. But I'm just going to have to circle back around on those. And I can kind of talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that I've fallen into, but I don't want that to be like the focus of where we go. What I would say, is that okay? Okay.
No, I'll say, like,
Okay.
I guess I'll talk about where I got to, and then we can talk about like our steps forward.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, that's great. And I can talk about what I'm doing this month, which is a step forward. So right now, one of the things I talk about in the video is I call these black holes. They are the parts of the project that are hard. I have every piece of confidence that I can get over those hurdles, but they're the things that just suck all the mental energy out of the project because you're not exactly 100% sure how to do it. So for month 1, my project is part-time startup, where I wanted to create a community for other developers to come together that are trying to build things like we are, and to support each other, not just in the development aspect, but the marketing, the business, the social media, all the pieces that go into running a business. But for me, the biggest feature that really the whole product swings or hinges on is the WYSIWYG editor. And that might sound small, but I've used other services before where I've really struggled with the editor. And it's like, if I don't like writing or contributing, I know I'm not going to. And so I wanted to make sure that out of the entire experience, I get that one piece right. And I have in my head a very specific use case, which is probably the most difficult use case. I want it to be like Notion, where I can just add blocks and move them around and edit right there. And that is incredibly hard. So, I mean, props and mad kudos to the Notion team for being able to create such a great experience, but I'm still working on that. So that will come. That's really the one piece remaining. I saved that black hole until the very end. With the second project that I'm doing, it's called Formtastical, and it is a serverless form hosting service. So there's plenty of other services that do this. Quez Forms is a great one. They've been a sponsor of the show. Git Forms is another one. Tally, but Tally has more of like a public form builder type situation. But I wanted to see, can I build this myself? There's some really interesting development challenges. And I was able to get over some of the development challenges. But one thing that I have never done before that is an interesting problem is a client hosted validation library. So I built tons of things that are hosted on my end. But when you talk about trying to provide tools for the other user to pull into their project, that's a whole different ballgame. I've never done that before. And so that's really the one main piece that's working. I have forms working. You can submit to the site. You can see all the entries. But in terms of that client side validation library and helpers for working with their forms, that part's not done yet. So as I'm doing these things, the thing that I realized is that Brad, I think you're onto something because you have been talking the last couple of months about how you are creating your Remix starter. You are all in on Remix. You're like, I'm owning Remix. And so these last 2 projects actually built them on Next, mainly because at Redwood, we're going all in on React Server components. And right now, Next is the only framework that really offers that in a stable production ready environment.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be able to build with React Server components. So these things are built in Next. But like I've created kind of this guide for working with Next, but I don't have components. So in month 3, I'm building a component library that will allow me to move faster and do everything. The nice thing about this particular project, there's really no black holes. I think I have proofs of concepts on all the hard parts, but I think that just goes to show like that is part of the process. If you can try and get through the hard parts first, the rest of the project will hopefully snowball, and hopefully, at least the goal is with this component library, that will make the next 9 months super easy because I'll have components that I can all pull from and be able to use in future projects.
Okay. Can I go back and possibly solve your markdown editor problem?
Yes,
or
please.
your rich text editor
Yes.
problem? What libraries have you looked at so far?
Yeah, there is one. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I can look it up. Colby Fayok did a YouTube video about it. It is built on top of TipTap. And I believe Stephen Tay started it, but the documentation does not line up with the latest release. And so I struggled. I could not get it to work. So then I went over to TipTap and started trying to integrate with that. And I think that will do everything that I want it to do. There's just some complex things you have to do in terms of customization. They provide all the pieces, but you still have to assemble the puzzle and put it on your project.
Okay. Wow, TipTap looks pretty well thought out. Facebook released one a while back, and I thought it was pretty good.
I looked at theirs.
Lexical?
Yes, Lexical.
Okay.
Yep, I did look at
Because
theirs.
it
I will
does have
give
the
it
block
another go.
features, like the
Yes, it
drag
does.
and drop.
Yes, it does. I'm trying to remember what roadblock I hit into with them. I can't remember, but I tried a few. But I think that also goes to when you're solving problems, at what point do you say, I'm going to commit to this instead of just trying another option?
Yes.
Because with JavaScript, there's so many different libraries you can reach for. At what point do you just say, I'm going to power through and figure this out?
Okay, this is a perfect transition to where I'm at and why I'm not just spitting out projects. Okay. The way I wanted to start my year was really solidifying a template, a starter kit, essentially, for Remix that has everything included. It makes an assumption about your database, the libraries you're going to use. It has auth, it has Prisma integrated, it has unit and end-to-end tests. It's ready to go. No UI. It's like black text on a white page. Like, you will build your app, but this is all the plumbing. And I'm there. I've got users, I've got CRUD operations, I've got a database, I've got all this stuff. And the last piece that I have is like end-to-end testing, some CI stuff. But it feels like I'm starting to spin my wheels to make this perfect rather than moving on. And the problem is, because of the way that these starter kits are architected, you copy them when you start a new project. So anytime you want to add a new feature, you're kind of like manually putting that into the starter kit and anything that you generated from that starter kit if you want to keep everything up to date. And so, sure, this week and this month is going to be busy, and I think that's also why I'm slowing down. But I think I'm feeling that like I'm starting to hit the nitty gritty where that project is slowing. But even with what I have now, I could start cloning it and working on other apps. But I want to make sure I put a pin in this starter kit before moving on. And maybe I need to make like the equivalent of your YouTube video where it's like, I told myself when this starter kit was done, I was going to kind of do like 5, maybe even 10 videos on like every little bit of it. Here's the session stuff. Here's the auth stuff. Here's how the database stuff works. Here's how I got testing to work. And like, that would make a great little series. But I haven't actually made a video saying like, this is what I'm doing, and maybe I need that.
One thing that I think will make a big difference too is you will find stuff as you build with it. You'll
Yes.
find configurations you don't like. So you can't see into the future and anticipate every single thing. So I don't think that that's preventable, but I think if I were you, I would get your CI/CD stuff where you want it and then just say,
Yeah.
okay, now we've got to build it. Um, in one of the initial build 12 projects that I was like creating updates, I talked a little bit about this and I'll include a link. But Ali Abdal interviewed Jody Cook on his podcast. It's a phenomenal interview, highly recommend. But one of the things that she talks about is what is your personal success plan? And the way that she describes it is if you look back on your life and say, these are the things that I was successful, what are the common thread? What is the common thread there? What is the thing that is the same for both of these that maybe you have your own personal success system that you didn't even realize you had?
Yeah.
So for example, for me, one of the things is I think Advent has been really successful in the past. The podcast has been successful, but what has made those things successful is that I've started talking about them in public far before I'm ready to. And the advantage to that is I think through it every time I talk about it so that I'm able to kind of get a solid idea and wrap my mind around it. But for better or worse, I'm far less likely to disappoint someone else than I am myself. Like, I'm okay with pushing deadlines back if like, "Oh, yeah, I'll do this with I'll watch this TV show or do whatever." Like, I'm fine with kicking that to tomorrow. But if I know that somebody's waiting on it or I've made a public announcement saying this is what I'm going to do, like, I feel that in my bones. And I'm like, I can't like, I have to deliver on that. So, for me, I've found if I'm going to commit to something, like I'm committed to build 12, it's because I can't come back and say, "Well, never mind. The first 2 months were hard. I'm just gonna not do it." Like,
Right.
I can't do that. That hurts too much.
Yeah, and I like the idea of every time you're talking about it, you're thinking through it
Mhm.
because it's like when your brain is a mess, go right. It's the same
Mhm.
thing, or like go make a video so that you think about what you're going to say and you say it, and now you've formulated your thoughts. And maybe I told myself I was going to kind of make like weekly progress updates, but like I didn't necessarily think to apply it to this starter template. It was
Mhm.
more like once that's done,
Mhm.
then we're off to the races. But like
Sure.
I'm not talking about what I'm doing now, which is probably a mistake.
Mhm. Well, and I talked about this in that YouTube video we were talking about is I've also found I call it cave mode versus stage mode.
Yeah.
It's not my idea, it's Thomas Frank. He tweeted about this, but the idea is when you're in cave mode, you're working hard, building something, and then you go to stage mode and you start talking about it. And I've seen success with this in that like I'll build something and then I'll start talking about it and I'll talk a lot about it, but I really struggle with doing both at the same time. And I think some of the reason behind that is because I don't necessarily know where I'm going as I'm working on it. I don't
Yeah.
know what the end result is. And it's also not polished. So it's harder one, it's harder to talk about, but
Yes.
two, I also don't want to talk about the I'm struggling with this.
But
So,
that's what
that's the
people
other thing.
love. That's what people love.
Yes.
I love watching
Yes.
people work through problems, and they'll make one
Mhm.
video where they're like, "This is kicking my butt. I'm stuck." And then 2 weeks
Right.
later, it's like, "I got it." You know?
Uh-huh.
It's somebody answered a question for me, or I got unblocked somehow, and now we're on the other side. And like
Yep.
watching somebody's journey like that is really cool. And I
Well,
think
and
that's what builds an audience and trust,
oh
and
yeah.
people get to know you, and
Sure,
all
sure.
beneficial.
Well, and I think juniors need to know that too, that just because we're
Yeah.
at a senior level does not mean that we never Google, that we never ask AI or Stack Overflow any of these questions. We do. That's maybe our superpower is that we're willing to do that. And then, I also think that's why we don't necessarily like the interview process and having to do homework or do code interviews and things like that. But that's really why we have that as part of the process is because people want to know when you hit up and against an edge, how do you solve that? What is your process for working through it?
Oh, I have a great like analogy to something that's actually going on at work right now. And I
Okay.
haven't really figured out a good answer to this. Okay. We run tests, end-to-end tests in our continuous integration pipelines. And we have this whole mechanism that marks tests as flaky and puts them into like a quarantine area where we run them, but we ignore their results and we categorize specific tests as flaky. And so then it automatically creates tickets to the teams who own these tests. And so we're burning
Wow.
down these tickets right now. It's like a pretty cool system. And when you burn down a ticket and you're trying to fix this flaky test, you can create a branch with that ticket name and it will automatically kind of run this test in this separate environment to be like, if you fixed it, we're going to unquarantine it and put it back into the flow. So it's a really cool cycle.
Interesting. Wow.
Here's the problem. Every time I pick up one of these flaky tests to work on, I can't get it to flake on my machine. And I've run them hundreds of times in a loop. And then I try a fix, just take a guess, right? And I push it up. And the flaky test environment doesn't run the test that I fixed because it only runs it for a certain browser type, let's say Chromium. So if the test failure was on WebKit, you can't even see if the fix that you guessed is working or not. And so it's this cycle shrouded in mystery of like, don't know what's actually failing and can't confirm that my guess is true or false. What do we do? And so it's these things that are like systemic to a company. You got to work with another team to figure out like, hey, what's the best way to do this?
Yeah.
And I think I just inspired some change where now we run those like quarantine test builds on all browsers so that you can see
nice.
how things are going.
Nice. I was going to say if there's a way to, I don't know, Docker is the thing that comes to mind, but be able to reproduce that environment so that you have the same thing locally as whatever the test suite is running on.
Yeah. We've got this like remote flag that you can run to say, hey, when you run this end-to-end test, run it on the CI architecture. But
interesting.
It actually fails with some like
it's a flaky
architectural
test.
error over there. It's not like it doesn't even run the test. It just like fails to set up. And I'm like, great, this works awesome, you guys.
That's fascinating, though, all the architecture that you have behind it.
Yeah, it is really, really cool.
So, I mean, that does bring up a good point when we're talking about building these projects. At what point do you say, I'm going to pass on tests so that I can move faster in order to prove it? Proof of concept.
Yeah. And this is kind of where I'm at on mine. I'm like, I'm in the middle of writing a bunch of end-to-end tests and it's not working in CI properly. It could have something to do with Playwright and how it stores session cookies, or maybe the CI environment doesn't have access to the SQLite database because of like file permissions. I haven't figured it all out yet. But it's like, yeah, should I just be like, whatever, I can run the end-to-end test locally on my machine, good enough, start on the rest of it, and I'll figure that out later. And like I said, this is kind of where I get bogged down in like, this starter kit has to be, good enough, perfect in my eyes before I move on. I don't know. Because if it is a bet, right? 4%, you need to start getting things out there.
What I was going to say, I can't remember what I was going to say. Shoot. It's going to be one of those days. I was just thinking though about, so as seniors, one of the things that we do when we're working on projects is we are very intentional about our craft and how things should be done. We generally have opinions about these things. We want PRs written a certain way. We want conventional commits, etc. Are there other things that you are bullish about, even though you're the only developer working on your project? You're like, it still needs to be done this way.
Yeah, I am being pretty pedantic at this point about keeping a change log, using GitHub tags and releases. Like I want there to be a nice trail of what I've actually implemented and everything's versioned properly.
Yeah.
That's
and
good. 100% test coverage in unit tests. But with end to end, I'm like, just hit the main flows.
Do you think that you'll continue that on as you continue to make projects, or is it just because you're like, this is a library that everything is going to use, this needs to be right, and I can be a little bit messy after I start building applications?
I tend to love all green tests and all green
Mhm,
coverage. It I do like to move fast, but if tests pass, I'm done. Like I
mhm,
really rely on them as a signal of like how things are going. And I like to do like YOLO updates a lot too. And I'm like, yo, test pass, we're good. And so
mhm,
I love that as like a security blanket of the app is working and you can trust it.
mhm. Yeah. So the title of this episode is Commits to Cash. We talked a lot about the commit part. Let's talk about the cash part. How are you planning on monetizing the things that you're building? Do you
I
know?
don't know. I here's the way I view it. My like income streams are from a couple places right now. I've got contracting jobs with like Cloudinary making some videos. I've got some like affiliate money coming in, whether it be from like Twitch. It used to be Twitch. I'm trying to get back monetized on YouTube. So building stuff, making content on YouTube, getting monetized there. I still sell t-shirts. Shout out to like Jason Langsdorff, who like continues to push the popularity of the Curly Boys shirts. Um, and then I think the way I want to monetize stuff is probably not ads. I think I want to do like maybe a one-time purchase or maybe a subscription. I don't know. Like the first app I want to build is this Super Bowl Squares app, and it's not gambling, but like I think I just want people to be able to like pay $1 to join a board or something. I don't know, and
Mhm,
I'll take that cash.
mhm. Yeah. That'd be cool. We did, fantasy football, and, of course, everybody's, like, Venmoing or Apple Cash
Yeah.
around, but it'd be sweet if the app would handle all that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of like Stripe doesn't do any of that stuff, any of the gambling stuff. They won't touch it with a
Mhm.
10-foot pole. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah,
So it's really hard to build that stuff online.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's my
I
strategy. I don't know, like getting monetized on platforms, I feel like YouTube, I think,
Mhm.
is really what I want to do. Um,
It
and then
still
just
takes a lot,
use,
though, for that to be, like, worthwhile.
yeah. But I think it's more like create your own luck. You build enough
Mhm,
apps, sure, put a small paywall up on some. Um, And if this leads to more contracting gigs or whatever, that's fine.
mhm,
I don't necessarily have the same goals you do of like going independent and stuff like that. So this
mhm,
is like supplemental side income, generating luck, kind of like putting myself out there more and more.
mhm.
And if
Yeah,
one hits, you know?
yeah, I think that's really the key is just diversifying your income. So having not all your eggs in one basket, that way if a algorithm changes or something like that, it's not going to totally upend your life and
Yeah.
you're just, SOL. So for me, I lost my monetization. Oh, that hurts, on YouTube, and so getting back to a place where my channel is monetized. Right now, I'm part of a YouTube cohort, which has just been phenomenal, and that's really what pushed me to release a video this week, so there's more content to come there. Also, as part of the cohort and talking about that personal success system, I am doing that in public, so, there is public accountability there to make that happen. So that is a small piece. The other thing that I think with YouTube is not just getting that AdSense revenue, but also doing brand deals. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I've realized too with brand deals is the like, dedicated video where you're walking through a particular system from a sponsorship setup is hard because you have to figure out how their system works and then get approval on it. If part of their API changes, you've got to go back and rework your script. I've been in situations where I've been trying to record a script for a company and then only to realize that the script that I submitted, that code no longer works. And then we had to go through the whole process all over again. So that is really hard for it to make sense from a time standpoint. And I think I would much rather kind of be like the podcast where I have sponsors where I can highlight or feature companies that I'm already using or working with
Yeah.
and want to suggest them instead of just trying to do these tutorials.
Yeah.
It's just hard. They're hard. So
Yeah. Okay, when you're doing all this process, how official are you when it comes to like having a company? Are you an
mm,
LLC? Do you have anything
mhm.
registered? Yeah.
I am an LLC, and some of that just comes, like I said, from running my own company. So I created an LLC back then and run everything through that. So it's just an extra level of protection there. So that means any forms I'm filling out, I'm not putting my social security number. If you're in the United States, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody's assigned a social security number. You're not putting that on forms. You're putting your or employer
EIN.
identification number. Yes,
Yeah.
EIN.
What other benefits does that carry?
Yeah. So I also have, I guess I can say, I also have business insurance. So fresh out of college, super green, I was doing some work with a client and did not have a contract yet. I was having conversations with them. We were working on the contracts and I ended up backing out. I heard some shady things about the people that I was working with and said, this might not be a great fit. And sure enough, proved to be true in the sense that they said, we were going to work with you because we were talking to you out of good faith and you're not going to deliver on stuff. So we'll sue you. And they threatened legal action. And like I said, just taking advantage of a green college kid. But it wasn't like I had any contracts. I had not invoiced them any money. So at that point, they really don't have a leg to stand
Yeah,
on.
what
But
are
it
you
was enough.
suing for? Yeah.
Right, exactly. It was enough to frighten me and being like, I will always have those things set up in place so that I never find myself in that situation
Yeah.
again. So that's really what it does is it says if something goes south, then they can come after my business all they want, but they can't come after me and my family and our personal assets.
Cool. What about like tax breaks and stuff? Does it help with write-offs for expenses or anything like that?
So an LLC, I'm a sole member individual LLC. And so that's basically like a person. And so we file just as ourselves and it kind of gets absorbed in that. It's nothing crazy in terms of tax breaks and things like that. I think if I really wanted to do my due diligence, I could look at the it's like, is it called R&D, R&R clause, where you say I am doing like I'm contributing to the future. I am doing research and development on things and you're contributing that way and they'll give you a tax break for that stuff. I don't
Huh.
exactly, to be honest, know how that works because I haven't done it before, but I know when I was at Zeal, one of the things that we did was we would file our time separately if we were doing things that would potentially add more revenue
Benefit
sources or
mankind.
yeah. Well, just okay, so let me give you an example of what that might look like. Um, when we were there, while I was working there, AR and VR became a thing. And so for Christmas, we all got a headset, we got a Quest. And so it was any work that we did in that particular area was considered that R&D, R&R, I don't
Hmm.
remember the exact term. But they were able to get a tax credit for that because that was very futuristic. We didn't have any business on it yet, but we were helping push the industry forward, potentially expanding our own business. We got tax credit for that.
Sweet. And so you're saying you still file your taxes as, Amy, and then you just say, I have an LLC and this is what we
Mhm.
made, and these are the write-offs that from whatever purchases I had.
That's right.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to declare mine this year. I got
Mhm.
over the threshold or whatnot,
Yeah.
and that was cool. And it got me thinking about a lot of this stuff where it's like, okay, maybe I should take this a little bit more seriously if I'm going to keep growing that number and just trying to be more official on the side.
Yeah. The thing about having your own LLC is you can file for it yourself. I chose to use a lawyer just because I'm ignorant on all those things. And it was just a one-time setup fee, but then I do have to file a filing fee every year when April comes around. So I just submitted my filing fee. When we moved to Illinois, what I did then was I technically opened up a second office. And so I had a remote Ooh, interesting.
You lost a camera.
Yeah, I know.
That's the
That's
first
I bet
time
the
that's ever
battery died.
happened.
I bet the battery died. Here, let me switch the
Ah.
camera. Sorry. Un momento, everybody. Oh, is it?
I always use those with dummy batteries.
Yeah, I have one, and it was like flaky on me. I bet I could put in a new battery. It's not letting me. It'll go to my iPhone. That's funny. Let's see. Where is my phone? Let me see if it'll do this. It's like how much we don't have. Sorry, everybody in the chat. Okay, see if that works. Nope. Interesting. I'm gonna have to maybe leave. Let me see if I can swap the battery out. Do you want me to keep talking, or do you want me to pause?
Pause, and we'll
Okay.
like jump back into it. Now I'm on a rabbit hole of looking up like how much does it cost to start a company in Texas? $300 is the answer. It's not bad.
Yeah, I think my whole filing fee was maybe $1,000. I just put in a new battery, and it did not like that. It's going to make me leave and come back. Sorry, 1 minute.
Classic. Just you and me, chat. Got any questions in the meantime? Amy was dealing with camera issues today. I was dealing with camera issues 2 days ago, I think. I was getting an error message on my Sony a600 that said, turn the camera off and turn it back on. And it took me, I had to like take it off the stand, take the battery out, turn it off, and wait like 30 minutes, an hour. And then it finally came back.
This is not the fancy YouTube
Plan
setup.
B.
Yeah, plan B. It's all good. Okay. The terrible thing is this mess. Oh, well, I can restitch it, but it makes my audio file split. Okay.
Too. Yeah.
Let's see. So I think I paid $1,000 for the original setup. So moved to Illinois. I technically opened up a second office in Illinois. So I was still based out of Tennessee. The stinky part was that meant that I had to file in 2 places. So it did double up, and Illinois has more taxes. So I was paying a lot more in that sense. But when we moved back, I could just close my Illinois office. So it all worked out because we did end up moving back, but you just have to do it on a per state basis, which can be a little annoying.
Okay, get this. Texas doesn't have an annual fee. So Illinois is $150 one time, $75 a year. Texas is $300 one time. That's it.
What? That's
Love
amazing.
that. God bless Texas.
Tennessee is $300 a year.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but we have no state income tax. Do you have state income tax?
No state income tax here either.
No. Move to Texas. No wonder. Cool. I was trying to think what yeah, so I did want to talk a little bit about pricing options, because there are a ton of options that people can do. So you can, as you mentioned, the one-time fee. I've done this stuff with like course creation, stuff like that. It's great in the sense that, you just make that charge once. You don't have to worry about the tech behind subscriptions. Yeah, it's much simpler. Yeah. You don't have the churn. You don't have to worry about people leaving and then coming back. But that means you are constantly in a state of marketing.
Yeah, I need new customers. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And also just trying to find different marketing channels. After you've announced it to your audience, you've pitched it, they know it exists, they didn't buy it. Like, how do you keep on, like, you don't want to exhaust that well, but you've got to go find different audience streams in order to market your product. So that's the thing. Everything has pros and cons. There's subscription stuff, which feels like the grass is greener on the other side, but you're also having to deal with churn. So if you're dealing with content or even just creating a SaaS application, you have to create new features or give people a reason to keep giving you money every month. One of the setups that I really like is Jay Klaus. He has the Lab, which is a community that people pay to be a part of. But he says, especially since it's a community, maybe he only charges you monthly, but you do have to pay an annual thing. You're locked in for a year. And he's like, basically, I don't want people to be questioning this expense every single month. I would rather just them question it at the end of a year. And I really like that idea. There's another couple of creators that I follow called the Zooks. They have a website called Wandering Aimfully and a podcast, which is really good. You should check them out. They're pretty funny and quirky on their podcast, but it makes it enjoyable. But one of the things that Jason does, and he released an episode specifically about this, is creating a lifetime fee. So he says, like, probably the most that I get out of a customer is $2,000 on average. And so he says, I'm just going to do a lifetime fee for $200. So you pay $200 and then you don't ever have to pay the money again. It's kind of an interesting relationship in the sense that you don't have people questioning whether you should re-up. It's also interesting in the sense that you create some stability there because you're going to have some people that are just maybe going to sign up for a month and leave. But then you have some people that might stick around a little bit longer. Creates your revenue stream is a little bit more secure because on average, I'm going to make $2,000 or I want to make $2,000. So I'm just going to go ahead and charge that up front.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
That's cool. But you need to have a really good value prop, right out of the gate.
Yep, for sure. For sure. I was trying to think of different things. Obviously, we talked about ads. I haven't done much with ads outside of AdSense. That hasn't paid a ton. I have been really curious about carbon ads. To me, they're non-obtrusive. If you've seen them, they're small, pretty well designed. But I did apply for it just out of curiosity. But you have to have, I think, 10,000 minimum views a month in order to be able to be a part of their network. So not there yet. Not there
Let's
yet.
talk about
I think it's 10,000, might be 100,000.
Let's talk about what you're spending the income on. I keep mine pretty lean. I've got Copilot right now, $10 a month. What else? Copilot and domain names and soon to be database hosting. That's about it.
Yeah. Sorry. There's a comment in the chat. I'll answer this really quick. Somebody asked about, Zane asked about affiliate links. I do have Amazon affiliates, but that's really the only money that I've made through affiliates. And that's not much. It's like maybe $30 a month. So, but that is a good revenue stream, especially if you can find some good partners there.
Yep. Agreed. I've got the Amazon affiliate links as well. And I put them everywhere. I don't try to shill stuff too much, but anytime I post a link to a product on Amazon, it's under my name.
Yeah. So money, I probably spend more than I should. I have not done as good of a job of downsizing after I was running my own company. So I cut back on costs, but there's a lot of costs that are probably more than it should be since it's just me. And that's things like I'm still paying for the Adobe Creative Suite, which is pretty penny, but I'm using it with Premiere. I still use Photoshop, still use Illustrator. That would have been the nice thing if Figma had gotten absorbed by Adobe. I was hoping that would have been one less monthly fee. I'm also using Adobe Stock, and I've racked up on credits. This is how they get you. I have a bunch of credits saved, so it's like I don't want to discontinue my subscription because I have all these credits. If I discontinue, then I lose all my credits that I've accrued. But it does make it nice when I'm doing design work, and I'm like, don't feel limited. I feel like I have a huge stock library that I can pull from. And so that makes a big difference. In terms of other assets, I also use Creative Market. I really like the work that they do there. And the fact that it's coming from other indie creators is really cool to be able to support them. I have Envato elements for if I'm pulling sound effects or video templates or graphics or things like that. That's helpful. I also have one with Epidemic Sound for being able to grab sound clips for videos and things like that. But from a coding perspective, it's probably closer to what you're talking about. I do pay for Claude, and I do have a subscription to Cursor, but work pays for that, so I don't have to worry about that. I am still on the free plans with Supabase, but I know that if some of these projects get big enough that I'll have to pay money there. In the past, I paid for Resend. Resend is great if you're looking for an email tool. But probably speaking of email, that's probably my biggest expense right now is ConvertKit. So my list size is 15,000, and that's a lot of money for ConvertKit. Yeah.
Email, yeah. When I finally did the email integration into my Remix starter, it's just like I was able to do it without tying myself to a service, which was nice because you can just
Mhm.
point to any SMTP server, and most of the good email services, if you're paying for them, just offer up their SMTP server as part of that subscription. Or you can
Mhm.
just use Gmail, which has a ton of drawbacks, but at least I didn't have to couple my code, my library with a specific um, email platform.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, man, the thing that I struggle with when you're talking about expenses, it's like I know that you have to spend money in order to use these quality assets. Like it
Yeah,
just makes things better, but at
yeah.
the same time, it's like, is that necessary?
You're not
Maybe not.
profitable yet, so like no. I
Yeah,
mean, tell
it's a
yourself
balance.
clearly it's not. It doesn't have to be necessary. You can look like sometimes I look at these products that people are making money on, and I'm like, that I can design and build. I suck at designing, and I can design and build that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I always tell myself it's not about necessarily how it looks, but there, man, at a certain scale, that really makes a difference. It's more about the problem that you're solving for people, the
Right.
value that provide in that sense. If that's solid, then work on building it up and making it
Right.
look nice.
Right. Um, Speaking of, since we mentioned Mark earlier, Mark Liu did release a video recently saying how much he's spending on his entire tech stack, and it's like 70 USD.
No way. I gotta watch this
Yeah.
video. I love stuff like that because it's like
But it's
I try to build a lot with a little, and I
yeah,
want to see stuff
yeah.
like that.
He's spending 70-ish dollars, I think, for his slightly over $1 million setup. The only thing that he mentioned, or a couple of things that he mentioned that we did not, is he is paying for Vercel in his stack, and he is using AWS for all of his image hosting and things like that.
Hmm.
There's a few, Taryn, I thank you for posting, and I think you posted in a couple of different places. So you had said, are there any good tutorials for setting up an email server like the one you spoke of? Um, I know I'm getting ready to do a few write-ups with work on, I'll use Resend for stuff, but Resend is actually really easy to set up. There's all Mailtrap is another good one, and Mailtrap is also really easy. Postmark is good. I think some of those things are a lot easier than you think they are once you get into it. The big thing is with Postmark and Resend, no, sorry, Postmark and Mailtrap, you have to message them and tell them why and what you're building because they want to try and protect their servers from spam. Because if they get spammed, then that's going to affect their deliverability. So, Resend, I think that's one of the things that it's made it successful. I don't know how they maintain their deliverability, but you don't have to wait to get approved. You can just start creating. So, and like I said, I'm not sure how they've solved that problem, but
Yeah,
anyways,
and
I know I'm like,
Taryn, based on what I was reading when I was doing the research for setting up SMTP servers, you don't want to do that on your own because there is this notion of deliverability that certain email clients like are strict on what they put into spam, and if it's a homegrown SMTP server, then these mail clients might just drop all your stuff into spam or like reject or things like that. So you want to go with a setup recognizable SMTP server, meaning, yeah, any of the services that Amy named.
the big thing that has been an issue over the last year is DMARC. If you start reading about that, but basically what that means is if you're using something like ConvertKit, even they will ask you to set this up. If you have a custom domain name in your DNS, just like a text entry, you would put one in there for DMARC and they'll give you the string to add. And so that's just another way that they can ensure the deliverability that you're not a spammer, that you are a legitimate person. And that's one way that they validate that is those DNS records. And I'll also say you don't want your URL, your domain name to be blacklisted because then that even becomes a problem from your day-to-day operations because any email that you send out on a personal level will be marked as spam. And that's really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, which, after having these conversations about email and deliverability, Amy, maybe your approach is right. Buy the domain name first, you know, get set there.
Well, and that's also why I'm like, I'm going to continue to pay for ConvertKit. Yes, it's the biggest expense that I have, but I also know that my stuff is getting sent out. I have tons of funnels set up. That would be a great one to episode in the future is to talk about marketing on these, but have everybody tagged based on forms that they filled out and said that they're interested in or different products and things like that. So to me, it's hard to pay that every month, but it is worth it. I'm trying to think. One thing that we haven't talked about that I do want to, we're already over time. Are you okay?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. One thing that I did want to talk about, because we are talking about monetizing your coding skills, there are different ways that you can do that. So you can do agency work. And I think that's probably the fastest way. If you're strapped for cash, if you can build something for somebody else, you can probably make money the fastest. You're not trying to validate an audience. You're not trying to market. You just have to go after one person and get one person to say, yes, we want to build this and send you money. You can do a course, which is another great way to share your knowledge. And you can either do that on YouTube or you can create your own course. I know people that have released content on Udemy and gotten money that way. Pluralsight, you can reach out to these other platforms that are willing to do a lot of that marketing for you. So you just have to create the content and deliver it, or you can self-host and create your own courses. And then you can also create a SaaS application where you're building code. And there's even different ways within that. You can say, I'm going to create an application and then people are going to pay me money in order to use the application. You could say, hey, you can pay me money and I'll just give you the code and you run it, you self-host it, and then I don't have to worry about support. I think one of the interesting models is when you have companies like Supabase that it is open source. You could take their code and self-host it, but you have people that say it's not worth the pain and the headache. Just go ahead and host it for me and I will give you money to host it, which is also kind of an interesting model. So there's lots of different options there. It doesn't have to be just hands-on keyboard typing things out in order to make money from the knowledge that you have.
Yeah. And I think half the time I'm just looking for ways to make money doing what I like doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out there searching for the dollar in any way that I can. I like coding, so I want to build something and get somebody to give me some money for that.
Yep. Sweet. I think that's about it. Emilite, good to see you. I didn't respond to your message. You just said, hey. And then Zane, you had talked about GoDaddy. Yes. I'm paying money for their Google Suite, but I think it's about the same amount. I'm paying the minimal amount. The nice thing about Google, I will say, is you can also create alternate or aliases. So if I bring another domain online, I will add that as an alias so that I'm not paying additional money for email. I can still send email out, but that's really all under one account. So
cool. That's awesome. I didn't know you could do that.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that until later. So I still pay for maybe about 3 accounts, but yeah. Let's see. Are you good for picks and plugs?
Yeah, I got some.
Okay. Let's move into the next segment of the show, which is our picks and plugs, where we pick something that we like and plug something generally that we've worked on. Brad, you have your picks and plugs ready to go?
I'm going to pick a new podcast, a new tech podcast that I started listening to. It's Caleb Porzio's Notes on Work.
Ooh, interesting.
I like the way he talks. It's really straightforward. It's no BS. He's got a lot of like exciting projects in the Laravel space.
Yep.
Laravel's had a lot of stuff going on. I've been listening to a lot of Laravel stuff lately. And so yeah, Notes on Work, it's pretty much everywhere where you can find podcasts, and it's just him talking into a mic. And I love the simplicity, and I'm like, I should do this. Just, or same thing, flip on a YouTube video and talk.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I love hearing other people's brain dumps. And the first episode I listened to was one about finances. And it talked about retirement and earning money and what's the critical numbers and how you view your assets. And I was just nodding my head so hard with that episode, and I was just like, me and this guy could be buddies, you know? So yeah,
Let's bring him on the show.
check. Yeah, we should. So Notes on
Yeah.
Work by Caleb Porzio.
For your plug, stay tuned for Brad's next podcast.
Apparently, yeah. There, I just dropped it in chat. And then I guess for my plug, I should plug Sage Spring, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Both Amy and I use the same financial advisor. She's been awesome in helping me get everything set up over the course of the past year. Even helped me with a bunch of tax stuff recently, and it's been a really good experience. So it's Sage Spring Investments, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I'll drop the link if you're looking for any help with that.
Tell them Brad and I sent you, even though it's Brad's plug.
What do you got, Amy?
So I'll pick something that's also in line with our conversation. So I bought this book called Sponsor Magnet. You can also get it on Amazon. It's by a guy named Justin Moore. And I believe, no, he did not self-publish unless his publishing company is called Tilt Publishing. But I bought this in December, and I thought I just bought the ebook. And then I had the hard copy come in the mail, which was a pleasant surprise. But it is all about trying to attract sponsors and building relationships with them. And I think really focusing on the relationship aspect, because there is something to be gained from both sides. It's not just a financial transaction on your end. They're also looking to create a relationship and further market their product. And so a good chunk of the book is also about how you can help the people that you're working with, which is really interesting. And then for my plug, I'm going to plug Build 12. So if you can go to build12.com, you can sign up for the newsletter. I'm getting ready to send out the first newsletter. It'll have some of the recap stuff that I covered in the YouTube video, but I'm also talking about like daily goals and some of the things that I'm finding, different libraries. So for example, earlier in the show, we talked about TipTap and Lexical and some of these different WYSIWYG plugins. Those would all have been included in the newsletter. So go check that out at build12spelledout.com. Sweet. Well, thanks everybody. The chat's been more lively today, which has been fun, and appreciate everybody joining us. And we will not be on the next 2 weeks for different reasons. So we will come back, and we have some exciting guests coming up. We have Josh Komu coming on. We have Lee Rob and Gant from Infinite Red, and there's a couple other ones I'm really excited about. So more to come, but happy Wednesday. Bye.
See y'all.
Oh, I didn't do the ending. Let me do the official ending. If you're listening in your podcatcher of choice, please leave a rating and review. It helps us have other great episodes like this one. And for now, that's all we got. Okay, bye.